Hello, and welcome to Conversations with me, Dr Theo Blackmore, part of the Discover Voices Media Network. Great. Anyway, here we go. Thank you very much. This is Theo Blackmore for Disability Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, doing a podcast today with...
Hello, I'm Jennie Williams, and I'm the CEO and founder of the charity Enhance the UK.
Brilliant. So that's Enhance the UK, not Enhance UK, is it? There's a different...
Yeah, unfortunately, many years ago, I tried to get Enhance UK, but it had gone, so we whacked a "the" in it. So it's Enhance the UK.
Great. So Enhance the UK, people probably won't have heard of that or may not have heard of that. So what do you do? Who is Enhance UK?
Who the heck are we anyway? That's a good question. So, okay. So it's probably best to start if I introduce myself properly without doing some show host intro. So yeah, I'm Jennie Williams, and I to understand how Enhance came about is probably best if you understand my background a little bit. So I have something called hereditary degenerative hearing loss, so a hearing aid user, and my dad's profoundly deaf, and I wear hearing aids in both ears, and that's important because I've always worked in social care, so I always worked in care homes, and I had various different roles in those care homes. And it was a bit of a two-prong thing for me because, one, I was working in that sector, and ironically, I was supporting disabled people, but I didn't really feel like any of my access needs were being met. So I'd go into meetings and films were being shown, and I can access them. There's no, closed captions on, and people were talking and they weren't taking time to make sure that I could keep up. Had to really, really fight to get my access to work sorted at the time. And, we're going back quite a few years now, I have to say. So it was all quite difficult. And then at the same time, I was working supporting disabled people. And I was noticing in their care plans, particularly, there was nothing written about their sexual needs, their sexual we use the term expression now, how they wanted to identify, anything like that. I mean, nothing. I mean, one time I found a care plan and it said, I think it was something like sexual preferences or something like that, and underneath it said Christian. So I don't know what Christians get up to, but I didn't really know what that meant. So I was like, okay, there's a need for that, to do something. We need to have a conversation about that. So that's when I kind of started thinking, and I was like, I think I need to start something up on my own, and that's kind of where Enhance UK was born, really.
Amazing. So when was that? How many years ago was that?
That was 17 years ago, something like that, 17, 18 years ago, probably a little bit longer actually, because the concept was there. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what to do, and I just started asking lots of questions and trying to work it out. And how Enhance UK is now to how it was years ago, it is probably quite different. Like anything, it evolves. I think my real first thought was, okay, there are lots of disabled people that want to go out, want to get a social life. I hate this term, I'm sorry if anyone likes this, but I find it really cringy, like when people talk about buddy systems and stuff. Like, I mean, I don't call any of my friends buddies or anything like that. I was just like, and a lot of people who have PAs, I'm sure people are listening have PAs, find it really difficult when they want to do something and their PA is not particularly interested. You're not always friends with your PA. Especially if you're going out on a date or want to do something romantic, and then you've got someone there that's like, not understanding the social cues or whatever. That's really difficult. So initially it was really about trying to match people up who had similar interests, right? And that both parties could learn. And the co-founder, he's not a founder anymore. He doesn't work with me now, but we're still good friends. It's a guy called James O'Driscoll, and he lost his sight pretty much overnight. Quite a rare disease. One eye overnight, the next eye within 6 weeks. And he really wanted to get back to the gym. And I didn't know how to using any of the equipment, and we were helping each other, and that's really how it was born. And we were on the stretching mat, and I said, there's something in this. You're helping me, right, way more than I'm helping you, but people wouldn't see it like that. And then we were on the stretching mat, and we were talking about dating, and he was like, I'd really like to meet someone. And it all kind of went into one mixing pot a little bit. Well, how do you meet people normally? Nowadays it's much more through apps, but it wasn't so much then. Well, going out, being sociable, doing things, going to the gym, and actually we were like, right, there is something in this. And there was. So we set Enhance up, and it like I said, it's evolved. But how it's set up now, and I'll try not to monologue too much, sorry, but how it's set up now, essentially like a social enterprise, because, and it won't come as any surprise to you that there was no funding at all for me to talk about sex, disability, anything like that. So we run general disability awareness training, deaf awareness training, BSL courses, run access audits, anything you can think of around that, to corporate businesses, big businesses. And then the money that we make from that pours back into the charitable side, which is called Undressing Disability. And with Undressing Disability, we run loads and loads and loads of mini campaigns. But one of the on sexual health, sexual abuse against disabled women, sex education to make it accessible, all of that, loads of different campaigns we've run over the years. But one of the main things we do is run something called the Love Lounge. And that is a free service to people to have 3 free sessions, and they can use those all in one hit, or they can spread them out the year. And it is run by myself and Zoe Lloyd. Zoe is a wheelchair user and became a wheelchair user when she was 18 years old through having arthritis. And she is a full-time wheelchair user. She has 24-hour PAs. And so we run this service, and people can come on, and it's a safe space where people can ask questions about anything to do with sex, disability, relationships, intimacy, pain, the psychological struggles, and people do very, very quickly, because a lot of the time people have nowhere to go and no one to speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. It still is a massively taboo subject, isn't it? Even just to talk about it and to think about it and to raise it as an issue. It's just not something that is part of the general conversation about disability and sex. It is a taboo. It's almost a taboo.
Well, I think part of the reason, I'm going to do a very unpodcast thing, sorry, and just let my dog out. He's scratching and no one wants to hear. So if you can edit that out, but I'm sure if you didn't, cockapoo going out. Yes, it is taboo. I mean, people feel very uncomfortable talking about disability in general, right? Very uncomfortable. And then you add on sex, and then people think, because when we think about disabled people, number one, lots of people don't even understand what disability is and what the definition of disability is, for starters. And when people think of disabled people, they automatically go to, in their minds, very, and I'm saying this inverted commas, vulnerable people that we have to safeguard, we have to look after, and a lot of the time massively infantilize. And of course, there's an element of safeguarding that we all have to have, whether you're disabled or not. You have to safeguard yourself. But what happens is that people put in the most restrictive option a lot of the time when it comes to safeguarding. They can't do that. And actually, what we want to do and what we're trying to do is empower disabled people themselves to have a voice and say, no, I'm allowed to make mistakes. I should be able to have a one-night stand that I heavily regret and do a walk of shame, right? Like, I have a right to do that just as much as everybody else does, if that's what I choose to do, because that's how we learn. That's, and if you don't want to do that, you don't want to do that. But you should be able to make mistakes, but still being safeguarded, but by putting the least restrictive option in there, so everybody's safe. And just as then, if you didn't have a disability and you were going on a date, you'd still hopefully text your friend and say, safety text, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, this is who I'm with, so what comes also with that is educating non-disabled people. So caregivers, for example, family members, and then the wider group of people. If you're going to go out on dates, then you're going to go, to the cinema or go out for dinner or all of those things. And then again, people understanding how that they can be accessible to a lot of disabled people without putting a big spotlight and it being very embarrassing. So actually, it did us a favour by not getting any funding, because you have to educate, in my mind. I don't mean educating people in a patronising way. Educating is learning, right? We're always learning all the time, about, for non-disabled and disabled people alike, so we can work together. And of course, a lot of non-disabled people become disabled. And that's an education in itself as well, because then you just go, wait a minute, my body worked really, really well. And now suddenly, like that, maybe it be an accident, maybe an autoimmune condition, like something happens and it doesn't. And
Yeah,
then you've
it's
got
the
to
majority,
re-educate
isn't it?
yourself.
The
Yeah,
majority of disabled people are people who are not disabled when they were born. It's like 3% of disabled people are born disabled, and the rest of us acquire it. I've got MS and I got that diagnosed when I was 27 or something like that. Like you say, living the best life in Barcelona, going out every night, teaching, running my life, having a brilliant time. Then I got MS and had to come home, and life changed completely. And things radically change. There's also
yeah,
something which I was very interested to talk to you about, which is about not necessarily radical change, but gradual change. So what happens is you might start a relationship with somebody and be in a situation. I mean, this might be true for lots of disabled people who start a relationship with somebody and then acquire their impairments or acquire their disability. And the power relationships change in relationships, and the power dynamics change. And, as well as all the sort of joyful aspects of sex, there is always that difficult side, which is, the power imbalances and how people deal with that, and which leads people, you used the word vulnerable earlier, which is a word we all try and shy away from, really, but it does leave people more vulnerable in some ways. And that can
absolutely.
lead to a whole changing dynamics in relation to sex abuse and all sorts of different kinds of physical and other kinds of abuse.
Absolutely. I mean, we see that coming through the Love Lounge all the time, and the word vulnerable. It's interesting you point that particular word out, because sometimes the reality is we are vulnerable. We are vulnerable people at times, and that's okay. It's not okay to the fact that that's the blanket word that's used, that we're vulnerable all the time. But again, that goes for everybody, disabled or not, right? There's elements of vulnerability there, but the power dynamics are really important, and one of the things that we really work with people, and couples often come onto the Love Lounge. I think it's really important to say that it's about relearning. So I will use an example of a couple. Obviously, I'm not going to disclose names, but they were both on a motorbike. Car went into their motorbike on a roundabout. They were both on it. He has now got a spinal injury. She has not. She really miraculously managed to walk away with hardly any injuries. They'd actually only been together a year, and their dynamic was very much, as they said, he was much more dom than she was in life in general, and I think in the bedroom. And there was a huge amount of guilt going on there on her part. He got injured, she didn't. So that's a guilt thing that happens for a lot of people. And they didn't want carers, they didn't want PAs coming into the house, because they found that was a real infringement on their privacy. She felt like that was a job that she should be doing to him. And then, of course, there's all these complications, because then at the same time she was resenting that somewhat, because she was then becoming a carer, and there's this blurred lines between when I touch you, and I'm washing you and I'm helping you, to when I'm touching you in a sexual way. And it's very blurry lines, and it's difficult for so many people. And sometimes just having a space to say that out loud and not feel judged and not feel guilty, because it's okay.
Yeah.
And so many people feel like that. But what we were doing and continue to do with them is work, like putting in these boundaries, and what was working for them. And for them, it's become, and they're quite a good case study, if you like, they won't mind me saying that, is actually they have now started using PAs, but only at certain times, for example, and using a lot more talking between them. They're quite adventurous couple sexually, and he was like, well, I can't be the dominant male that I used to be. And I said, well, of course you can. Of course you can. But it's changing the way that you see that. And I think that, I'm not saying this flippantly, Theo. This is really, really something that I believe. Of all the years I've been doing this, I think disabled people and disabled couples particularly have actually a much better sex life, what if they're prepared to open those lines of communication. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people who are non-disabled and they've been together for a long time, they don't talk about it anymore. They have kids, they might book it in on a Tuesday and have a quickie because they think, or a Sunday morning, let's put it in the diary, or whatever. It doesn't become fun. And we think about sex, a lot of us think it should be impromptu, ripping each other's clothes off, all of that. That's great when you first get together, but the reality is that changes with time. That doesn't quite happen like that anyway. And people think planned sex is can be really boring, right? It's not spontaneous. It's not how we used to be. But actually, if you look at the kink world, which I never knew a lot about at all, but it's one of the most popular subjects that we talk about. And the reason it's so popular is because there are a lot of similarities with kink and having a physical disability, particularly, but actually, if you're neurodivergent as well, because you have to plan things sometimes, you have to have safe words. You have to talk about what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You have to talk about these things, and it doesn't have to be boring. It can be extremely exciting, the build up and the thought, and looking at clothes and looking at toys and looking at instruments. And I say instruments, you know what I mean by that. That sounds a bit scary, doesn't it? But there are a lot. There's hundreds of different kinks out there, and people then start researching it and then thinking, actually, this is really sick. I've never really used my voice before, for example. And now I really like doing that. I like talking, or I like sexting, or whatever it is. So, particularly with this couple, but with lots of people, we start helping them relook at what sex means to them. Sex doesn't necessarily mean penis and vagina. It can mean lots of different things, like, and also what sexual expression is, what makes you feel good, what makes you feel sexy. Is it putting on your perfume or your aftershave or doing your makeup, doing your hair, and then re-looking at that as well? Because a lot of people who have maybe had an injury or become ill end up wearing clothes that are comfortable, because it's easy to go to the loo, or it's easy to, they're sat in their wheelchair, or their mobility is limited or whatever. But do you feel sexy like that?
Yeah.
Probably not. So actually, not all the time, but there are times when you think, no, tonight I'm going to dress up a little bit, or today I'm going to dress up a little bit, put my makeup, feel good about myself, put my music on. I feel good. And once you start feeling good, that's when you start feeling sexy. That's what it is about for so many people. So it's not science by any means, but we create a space for people to talk about this, and we come up hopefully with some easy solutions that people can work on together.
And so when you say you create a safe space for people to do this, is this an online space so that people can join? Because I don't know where you live or where you're based or anything like that. I mean, do you have rooms and meetings where people come together, or do you do it all online, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's all online. Don't worry, people won't be coming around sitting with my snotty children while the TV's going on in the background. No, it's all online. So and all the information, and I'm sure we can push out the information with this as well. But if you go onto the website Enhance the UK, and you'll see the Love Lounge, you click on that, and then there's something, we've got a Calendly diary, and then you click on the dates that work for you, and then you put your name. It's all totally confidential. It's just with myself and Zoe, but we have lots of other healthcare practitioners that work alongside us on our team. So we have occupational therapists, we have physiotherapists, we have psychosexual therapists, we have body workers, we have so many different people. We have sex toy specialists that we can then reach out to if we need to get their information. And we also run events. So tonight we're running an event. We run one a month, and tonight actually is on kink. And we've got a psychosexual therapist, and we've got an occupational therapist on. So we're going to be looking at, again, different products that you might not have dreamed of thinking of using for, or maybe you're a real kink enthusiast, but a lot of people aren't. That you might want to experiment with and explore with. So these two particular people are going to talk through some different products that I've chosen. And a lot of the time we're talking about, for a lot of neurodivergent people, physical touch and smells and taste and skin-to-skin contact can be really difficult. So again, it can be using different instruments that you can use, or, products. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm learning about it all the time, and I'm not an expert in that area at all, and nor do I claim to be, but that's why we work with people that are experts, and we say, right, come in and talk to us. So those online events, they're not totally free. They're £6, and then they run for an hour and a half, and they're group, so that's we've got 15, 16 people on tonight. So it's not huge, and it's very informal, but the love lounges are just you, and they're totally confidential.
Right. And so there's a whole set of issues as well around disability, but then I was thinking about it this morning, because it's probably not specifically about disability, but it's people living at home. But lots of disabled people live at home for a long time, maybe even their entire lives, and you get people with different impairments. So people with learning difficulties, I'm thinking about, and there's whole sort of issues in there around sexuality is a big issue as far as I can think. So there's lots of parents who won't particularly be open to having their adult children, expressing their sexuality and expressing their sex lives. And they've got to do that at home. So it can be really quite uncomfortable for everybody and all concerned. So I don't know how that is dealt with. And then there's issues around LGBTQ adults who have non-LGBTQ parents who might not agree with that kind of sexual expression, or, you know what I mean? There's all sorts of controversies around it. We live in a really weird age at the moment when it's sort of lots of right-wing politicians who just really dispute these things that ever exist and think it's all down to choice, and there's all this, terrible discourse going on. But how do disabled people kind of find a way through all of that? Because that sort of intersectionality complicates everything.
Massively. I mean, there's huge infantilization that goes on, and again, without disclosing any details, we had a gentleman on 2 weeks ago who was in his 40s. He was 46. He has autism. He's working, but he was taken out of school from a very young age because he was seen as a troubled child. So he was homeschooled. Parents very religious, Catholic, and when I say he had not a drop of sex education, even the basic words he did not know and understand, and he was just picking things up from going around. But really, he didn't have a phone because his parents didn't deem him responsible enough to have a phone. He's a grown man who was working. So absolutely, I mean, and people a lot of the time there are, what I say, child locks, on the internet, like firewalls put up, so restricted access. That's massively problematic for a lot of people, so they can't access that information. Luckily, Enhance UK's website does manage to filter through that, so people can find our services even with that up. But we run training for care homes and care home providers, anyone working in the care sector, and a lot of that is about, well, number one, for staff to understand that they have to leave their values at the door. We really work with facts rather than values. But within that training as well, it's how you can support a disabled person if that person's getting care and parents are trying to get involved, and how to very gently have those conversations, but firmly. And you are working with adults and you're not working with children, and people have the right to have this voice. But as I said, this has to be this two-prong approach, because you can empower disabled people and they but if nobody else is there supporting it, it falls flat really quickly, and then people are even more frustrated and their mental health starts to decline. So that's why care homes, care staff, care providers, anyone who gets that extra support needs training to be able to have these conversations. And these care plans need to be bulletproof. There needs to be that information, and and disabled people need to understand they have a right to see their care plans. They have a right to access it and put what they want in it, and they also have a right for certain elements of it to be private. For only, so not every agency that comes in reads their personal information, because when it comes to their sexuality or sexual expression, because I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want somebody reading that I don't know. So there's no easy answer to it. Is it a problem? Massively. Do we know that? Massively. All we can do is continue to try again, run training, educate people, create a space. We have had people come onto the Love Lounge who brought their parents on, and said, I want my mum to come and sit with me. I want to be able to have this conversation. We've done that many times, actually. And some have gone well, some haven't so well. But, that's all we can do is try. It's difficult. It's really difficult for a lot of people, but it's acknowledging that.
It's a massive thing. It must be one of those, it's an ancient thing, isn't it? Which I prefer a slightly different version of it. But how do you eat a bicycle? And the way you eat a bicycle is you cut it up into small bits. But it's a massive issue for you because there's like 14 million disabled people across the country. And it's just a huge number of those people who would benefit from services that you provide. But how do you reach them? How do they know about you? How can they find you? How would they know this is an issue even exists? Like you say, there's a lot of disabled people who are never educated about anything in relation to sexuality and sex lives. So it's just must seem insurmountable. There was a French man who did actually eat his bicycle. That's the reason why I use that, because the phrase people normally use is, how do you eat an elephant? But as a vegetarian, it's like, how do you eat a bicycle? And he cut it up into tiny little bits and ate it over a period of years. And then he ate a bicycle.
An actual bike?
Yeah, push bike.
That's a whole podcast in itself, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you know what I mean? So how do you eat? It's just like, how do you deal with this insurmountable issue? It's just enormous. You must just get overwhelmed by it sometimes.
No, it really is. And I think when people say, well, what do you want for your charity? What's the main aim and goal? And I say, I always say the same thing. I'd like us to not need to exist. But that's not the way the world is right now. And as you say, we're going backwards massively in many areas, which is very, very scary. Having said that, equally, there are lots of very forward-thinking people, young people who really understanding their brains, who really understanding what diversity is, and those who are neurodivergent, and I think that is something that's beautiful, and that's really, and understanding boundaries in a way that certainly when I was born in the 70s and really kind of grew up going to school in the 90s. Boundaries, I don't feel were really much of a thing there. We didn't even use that term then. But now younger people are much more boundary based, which is fantastic. But currently we are, we're desperately looking for more funding. We're desperately looking to work in more partnerships with, organisations. So we can. I feel like a lot of counselling is very elitist because people have to pay for it, and it's really expensive, and you're deep diving into a lot of issues. The Love Lounge isn't counselling. That's not what it is. There's an element of it, of course, but actually what we're able to do, because it's not in inverted commas counselling, we can penetrate and deep dive pretty quickly and ask questions that actually, if we were governed, we wouldn't necessarily be able to do. And we come up, and what we aim to do is come up with some solutions, and we give people homework, say, right, okay, we want you to go and do this. So they don't have to keep coming back. And so there is that room for the next person to be able to come in and use it. And that's why we do have to limit it to 3 sessions, because an awful lot of time and research goes into that. It's not just a session and then they go away. Zoe then goes and researches massively whatever we've spoken about. But Do we need more of them? Yes. Do we need more funding? Yes. Do we need to be working in collaboration with more organisations, NHS, universities, etc., 100%. Am I determined to do that? Absolutely. This is what my job is, and this is the reason I set it up. So I'm just going to continue to do that, and I want people to use the services. So things like this is great, because I want people to know about it and come and use the Love Lounge. And it's not just the Love Lounge. We've got lots of free services on our website, but the Love Lounge is particularly one that I feel people get a lot out of.
Brilliant. So we've talked about lots of negative stuff and all of that, and how things get difficult for people. But the thing that everybody needs to know and understand and realise and remember is that sex is fun. And that's the underlying message, I guess, that you're trying to put forward, is that disabled people have the right to fun as much as everybody else does.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of negative, but equally, I think in the same breath, so saying, actually, I think the disabled people I work with have better sex lives than non-disabled people, and I stand by that. And that's a bold claim, isn't it? And exactly that. Sex isn't as you see it in the films. It isn't. It's a bit messy. It's a bit gross. It's a bit noisy. But all of those things, it should be funny. You should have a connection with someone. You should be having a laugh and just be like, "Well, I won't be doing that again. Oh my God," And that is the point of it. And sex isn't just, as I said, penis in vagina, because that's one tiny element of it. And especially if you're in a same-sex relationship, obviously it's not that, but it's about what sex can, intimacy is what is important for a lot of people. Feeling desired, and it doesn't mean you've got to love someone, far from it. If you can go around, if that's what we want to have one night stands, have one night stands, but as long as it's what you want to do because you feel good and you're safe and it makes you feel desired and you get something from that, people can't tell you that that's wrong or right. You have to be comfortable doing that. And I think just taking away this huge taboo around it, what I want to say is, one of the parting things is, especially if you're struggling with this, and parents, as you said, that are pushing their beliefs on you, is that we really need to try and just deal with facts. And if somebody's coming in, and saying sex is only between a man and a woman, and sex has to be between two people who love themselves, and sex has to be, whatever, only to procreate, and are we actually working with facts here, or are we working with values? And actually, that's quite a quick way to strip that down. And so even if you feel like you're on the losing side of an argument, you can hold on to that and say, they're just their values. And actually, I need to work with these facts, or I need to try and get some support, which I know is harder than it always seems, sometimes seems to be. But as you said, this should be fun. This should be a fun subject. And we're here to try and help people feel good about themselves, and have a laugh and have some fun and make mistakes.
Yeah. Your website's fun. You've got lots of things on your website. You've got toys, you've got things that you sell, things that people can buy. So, there is a lot of stuff out there that people can buy and use and make their lives fuller, essentially.
Yeah. And you don't even have to spend money, like we created an inclusive sex toy range, which is what you can see. And we spend a lot of time creating that range for people with, maybe poor dexterity, and if people have carers. So we've used extra remotes and big buttons so people could turn it on with their nose or their chin or whatever. And people get really confused by the law. Carers can't be in the same room as you while you're using a toy. But can a carer place a toy, put a toy in position, and then they have to get out of the room, and it needs to be off, and then you can press the button. That's legal. They can't put anything inside you. That's illegal. So we've created things like panty vibe, which goes over the female area rather than inside, for example. And again, with a man, they can't be fully hard, they can't be hard, but so the carer needs to be out. So we've created something that a man can use. So I'm trying to be subtle the way I speak about it, so I don't want to get upset anybody. But there are, it's not cut and dry. And a lot of the time, if carers say, I'm not doing that, that's against the law. If you can do some research and you look into it, actually a lot of the time it's not against the law. There is support, but what we need to understand is those carers have not been educated, they've not had training. And actually, I feel sorry for a lot of these carers. If they haven't had training, why would they put themselves in with the risk of legal ramifications? They wouldn't. I wouldn't. So actually, it is, sadly, and it shouldn't be, but there's probably that extra job for some disabled people to do that research themselves and say, actually, no, it's not. You need some training. I have the right to this, but you need some training. And speak to the care home provider, speak to the managers, speak to the agency, if that's what, I'm not assuming everyone has care, obviously, but those who do and that can't use toys and things themselves, then actually you do need to do that little bit extra support, or come and talk to us about it.
Great. So that's you have a full and busy and active life. I mean, that's just 24 hours a day, it seems to me.
Yes, well, you've got to be passionate, haven't you? You've got to be passionate about what you do, and I am passionate about it because I think it's important. I think it's important to me. It's important to me. And, as somebody who, I had an autoimmune condition called lichen sclerosis, and it came out of nowhere when I was 40, and it massively affects females, particularly affect my sexual function. And it was ironic that everyone says, God, Jen, you set up a charity for your future self. I'm like, I know, right? Like, oh my God. And it is really affects my life hugely. And for anyone out, females particularly, who have lichen sclerosis, I hear you, I see you, it can be pretty grim. So even more passionate about it now, because it's important. It's important to me. But what I will say is my parting part on this is that sex shouldn't be painful. And I think a lot of disabled people put themselves in positions sometimes that are painful because they think they should do it for their partner. It should not be painful. It should be fun. It should be enjoyable, and it should feel good. And if it feels painful, you need to stop and you need to communicate. And if somebody isn't supporting you with that, then they're not the right person for you, which is a big statement to make, but it's true. So yeah, if you need support, please come and chat to us, come and find us.
Brilliant. Is there anything else that we've left out that you would like to say that's what's available through your organisation or your services?
No, I think I've pretty much covered it. But like I said, you can come on to, if you want to follow us on Insta, we're Undressing Disability, and we've also got a Love Lounge Insta page, which we've just had to set up because we're constantly getting shadow banned and risk of how things are at Insta. But so yes, so Love Lounge and Undressing Disability on Instagram, or go onto the website and everything's there.
Absolutely brilliant. Lovely speaking to you, and a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.